Hello. It is freezing in Utah today. It's been raining all day and all yesterday. It is cold. Okay, so we are going to learn about French knots today. So we're going to do that first. Sorry, I'm tired too. So use some scraps. I'm going to use some green. I'll probably need another green as well. Okay. This is my practicing piece. Okay. So I'm going to show you French knots first. So French knots, the size of your French knots will be determined by how many strands you use and how many times you wrap it around the needle. So we're going to do 3 strands and 6 strands of French knots, and then we're going to wrap it 1, 2, and 3 times. And then down here we'll do colonial knots. So this is one lesson that I absolutely love every single time. I just think it's fun. Okay, so let me see how many strands are here. There's 4. Okay, so let's do French knots first, and then I'll show you colonial knots. So if you don't like French knots, colonial knots are pretty close to the same thing. They look slightly different, but the way you stitch them is different. So, okay. All right, let's talk about it. Let me get my needle threaded. My kids are home today. We have short days on Fridays, so if you hear them in the background, try not to mind that noise. Okay. So French knots start the same as any other. I'm gonna tie a little knot before we get going. Okay, so French knots. We're gonna start with coming up from the back like everything else. It's really nice if you can use 2 hands, that you're not, if you have a hoop stand, they're great, but if you don't, it's totally fine. I will, after I finish showing you this, I will show you how I hold my hoop and do French knots at the same time. So pull with your non-dominant hand, pull it over to the side. So if you're left-handed, you're going to pull it to the right. If you're right-handed, you'll pull it to the left. What we're going to do is just bring our needle down and wrap it 1 time. Whoops. And then we're going to go down. We're not going to go down in the same hole. We're going to go down right next to it. So it's like really close. If you go down in the same hole, you risk that not being pulled through the hole, especially when you're only wrapping it 1 time. So if you go down right next to it, then it doesn't look like it's different, but it is less likely to pull that knot through your fabric. So we're going to come down, wrap it 1 time, go down right next to it, pull our knot to the bottom, and then push our needle through. We're going to keep this tension here until most of our thread is through. So we're just going to pull that. I usually let it go when it starts to kind of pull on that tension. And then we've got a French knot. So let me show you that again. Non-dominant hand holds it. We're going to wrap it 1 time. We're going to go back down. We're going to pull that knot to the bottom, keep our tension, and then pull our needle through. Let go, and you've got a knot. Okay, so let's do two wraps. So we're gonna go 1, 2, and then we're gonna go down, and then we're gonna move our knot down, same as we did before, and then pull that through. Okay. gonna say something else and now I don't remember what. 1, 2, put our needle in, pull that down to the bottom. Now, if it's really hard to pull your needle through, then you're holding this too tight or you've wrapped it too tight. It shouldn't be so tight that you can't pull your needle through. Like, I'm pulling it really tight right now, and it's like really hard to pull that needle through. It shouldn't be that hard to pull your needle through. You can keep tension without pulling it so tightly that you can't pull a needle through it. Okay, so 3 is the exact same, except we wrap it 3 times. There should be enough tension that it keeps the shape without making it difficult to pull your needle through. Okay? So 1, 2, 3. Knot down to the end, pull our needle through. Okay? Now, you can see the difference in sizes as we wrap it 1, 2, 3 times. So you can get different knots depending on how many times you wrap it, but also how many strands you use. So I'm not gonna tie that off, I don't care. I'm just gonna cut it off. Okay, so I already have 3 strands in my needle. So what I'm gonna do is just double the thread over and tie the 2 ends together. That will give me 6 strands, but with less bulk at the eye of my needle. So that's another trick. If you're having a hard time pulling, like if we had 6 strands in our needle and had a tail of those 6 strands, then you've got 12 strands at the eye of your needle trying to pull through. So with French knots, I will almost always just do my thread in half and then tie them together because I don't have as much bulk pulling through that knot as I would if I have 6 strands in there. Now, it's not impossible and I don't always do it, but just keep in mind if you're having a problem with French knots and want to use a lot of strands, try this trick. Okay, so this is going to be done the exact same way. We're just using more strands. So we're going to wrap it once, go down, just like that. They look a little thicker. It looks about the same size as our 2 wraps, very similar. That one was a little bit messy. Now, if you get to this point and you think, oh, that's a little bit messy, just pull your needle back out. If it hasn't gone all the way through the fabric, you can just pull it out and redo it. So even if you get to this point, you can still push it back out and undo that knot. Okay, so there's 2. And as you're working on French knots, your thread will get twisted because you're winding it around a lot. So feel free to like let it untwist. Okay, so we're wrapping that 3 times. See, look how much bigger those get by using more strands. You can use as many strands as you want. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 12, whatever. Okay, one thing that's also fun with French knots is I like to make loose ones sometimes. So if we go 1, 2, 3, and keep this loose, you see how loose that thread is? And then pull it through, then we get like these big fluffy French knots. Now, if you do this on accident, you can fix it, but sometimes like when I'm doing like bushes or trees, I like to do these big fluffy ones. This is wrapped the same amount as this one, but this one I've pulled tight and this one I've left it loose. Now, if you've done a loose one and you need it to not be that loose, something you can do is to come up on the edge of your knot like this, whoops, right here, and go back down through your knot and like tack it down. It changes the look of it a little bit, but Hold on, I gotta cut this. My thread is too short. So it'll change the shape of it a little bit because you have it tacked down on two sides, but it helps a little bit if you have like a giant French knot that's kind of out of control. Okay? All right, so now if French knots are giving you troubles, let me show you a colonial knot. Okay, so I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna use 3 strands and double it over to make 6. I'm gonna do the 6 first, just because going from 6 to 3 is a little bit easier than going from 3 to 6 without tying it off and making another knot. So, okay. So colonial knots, we wrap it the same no matter how many strands we have. So the only way to make a colonial knot bigger or smaller is to use more or less strands. So colonial knots, we come up from the back, we make a backwards C, C for colonial, we come up in that, and then we wrap this tail end over it. So we're creating like a figure 8 or an infinity sign. Okay, and then we're pulling that, whoop, sorry, I was showing you too many things. We pull that, we put it down, and then we move that knot to the bottom. So similar to like we did with the French knots, but we're just wrapping it differently. And then these sizes will be different. So let me show you that again. So we've got our backwards C. We're gonna come up in it. We're gonna wrap this around. And then we're gonna come back down and pull our knot to the bottom. One thing I like about colonial knots is I can get them a lot more uniformed than I do my French knots. These ones I did pretty good, but like these two are like, they look different, where these ones look a lot more the same. I have an easier time getting my colonial knots to look the same. So if I'm doing something like polka dots where I want them all to be the same, I'll usually do colonial knots. Okay, so one thing great about if you're using like 6 and want to go to 3 strands, if you tie it off, you can just trim one side of this and then you've got 3 strands, which is what I'm gonna do. Okay, then you don't have to like create another knot in the back. All right, so 3 strands, it's the same, but just less strands. So we've got our backwards C, come up in that, wrap it around, create your figure 8, and then go down. Okay, do you see how different they look depending on how many strands you're using? So if you're having a hard time with French knots or colonial knots, a good way to practice is to get something like this. Just get a hoop and put some fabric in it and just practice and see like what sizes you like. Practice getting them so they all looked uniformed. Let me show you my trick for using both hands when you don't have an embroidery stand. Okay, so this is just crazy. Don't worry about it. I usually set this down either on my lap or a table. I do my knot, I put it down, and then I use my other hand to pick it up and finish putting that knot through. It's okay to put it down because then you can have both hands and then pick it up. Just make sure you're keeping that tension. So you kind of have to hold on to it and pick it up as you're working on it. I mean, it's possible to hold it the whole time, but it makes it a lot harder, I think. I don't know. I think it's easier to like set it down, do your stuff. Same with colonial knots, because then you have 2 hands to work with and then pick it up. Okay? So practice where you can. I have a bunch of like 3-inch hoops that I usually use. I just didn't get one ready and I had this sitting around, so But you could use any size hoop and just fill it with French knots. There's tons of cute patterns out there that use all French knots. Like you can make like a rainbow or fill a circle or do like a, I don't know. There's lots of ways you can do like French knot projects. So, all right, let's get to our stitch along. Let me get that out. So we are gonna do this branch here. So let me get this in here. So we're gonna do, we've already learned French knots, but I'll show you, I mean, we're just gonna incorporate them into our project, but we're gonna learn one other stitch first before we do our French knots on our project. We're gonna learn the fern stitch and the fly stitch. So like colonial knots and French knots, they look nearly the same. You just do them a little bit differently. So we're gonna use our dark green. So this is the DMC 890. I'm gonna keep with my 6 strands. Needle. All right, so first we're going to learn the fly stitch because I like it better. So if you don't like this, there will be another way. Okay, so we're gonna start at the top. And we're gonna go down. So we're gonna go, I think I did these offset, but I am actually gonna make them the same. So what we're gonna do is go to the bottom of the V and put our needle down. And then we're gonna come up to the top of one part of the V. We're gonna go down on the other side of the V. Okay, and then we're gonna keep this loop open. We're gonna come up at the bottom of the V in that same hole. And then we're gonna pull that snug. So this stitch is, we go A to B to C, and then D, we go down to the bottom of the next V. Okay, so we're gonna come up at the top of the V, go down on the other side of the V, come up at the bottom, and pull it snug. Go down the bottom of the V. We're gonna do that all the way down. I have a really long piece of string right now, piece of thread. All right, now it'll be a little, well, no, we'll finish it the same way. Doesn't matter what side you come up on. I mean, you can come up on the right, left, you can switch back and forth. You won't be able to tell the difference, so don't feel like you have to do it the same way every time. Last one, up and down. Keep that loop open, come up at the bottom. Hold on, I couldn't get it up through there. And then pull it snug. Now, you can make this last stitch longer and anchor it that way. You can put it down just on the other side of this V. So it's like going down right there, Just make sure you're over the top of that. You can make this a longer stem or a shorter stem, whatever you want to do. So I'm gonna make mine kind of shortish. And there we go. So this is the fly stitch. And then I'm gonna move my hoop and we will do the fern stitch for the other one. And then we'll add our French knots. So this creates the cutest little pattern on the back. It's one of my favorites. All right, tie that off. Okay. Let me see if I can just move my hoop stand. No, that's weird. I gotta take this. Sorry.
Are you done?
I'm not done yet, buddy. Okay, let me flip this around. I nearly always do a fly stitch versus a fern stitch, but you don't have to if you don't like it. I feel like it's faster and I feel like it looks a little cleaner, but I'm going to show you this other way just so you have it. So this way you can do it so it's offset as well if you liked that look better instead of doing them all like connected. So what we're going to do is start at the top like we always do, and we're going to go down a stitch length, and then we'll just do our little twigs there, little side branches. This is coming out so cute. Oh, thank you. It's a fun one. I was really excited about it. Okay, so the big thing to remember is that we're using the same holes. Technically, I think that there is, I forgot this side. Technically, I think there's a direction you're supposed to do, like a certain order to do like a technical fern stitch, but like right, center, right, left, center, right, left, center, right, left, but I don't really worry about it. This way creates more of a V shape, like a really pointed V shape, where the other one, it's a little bit more of a rounded V shape. So it looks nearly identical. It's just slightly different. So I don't think it makes a big enough difference that I would choose a fern stitch just because of how it looks. I prefer the first one because I can do it a little bit more quickly. I'm going way off pattern here. I'm just like stitching. I think that this was supposed to be the same green as the stem. I might have used the wrong green. It's not gonna matter. We're gonna do these ones next to it a different green. So if you're using 890 here, we're gonna use 3345, and vice versa. If you use 3345 here, we'll use 890. I don't remember, I didn't look at the pattern before I started. I don't remember which one I colored it. It doesn't matter. All right, 2 more stitches, and then we'll add our little French knots. Let me tie this off, and then I will get out the red that we're gonna use. All right. We are going to use DMC 22 for the little berries at the ends. I'm going to use 6 strands, and I'm going to put all of it in my needle, all 6 strands, just so I can show you what that kind of looks like. I mean, it looks the same, but it's just a little bit harder to pull it through. Okay. Now, wherever you started, most likely at the top, remember that you have a knot there and you're about to put another knot there and do a knot. You've got a knot in the green, you've got a knot in your red, and you're going to make a knot. So I like to, if I have a knot already there, I like to come up outside the knot, because then I feel like it's a little bit easier to go down in a knot than up in a knot. I don't know. Okay, so I'm gonna do 6 strands and wrap it 2 times. If you want your knots smaller, then do fewer strands or fewer wraps. So I'm gonna wrap it twice, and then I'm gonna go back down in the hole. We're gonna share a hole with this green stem so that they're connected. So do you see how pulling those 12 strands through those knots, it'll make your fingers sore really fast. I have to make this a little bit looser. Keeping that a little bit looser, a little bit less tension helps. But if you're having a hard time, seriously, go down to 3 strands and double your thread over your needle. I promise it'll be so much easier. I don't always follow my own advice. I didn't hold that tension at all. But I don't worry about French knots being perfect. So if you also don't worry about it, then we can be friends. This is also nice. Sometimes when you're close to the edge, you can kind of hold on to the hoop and your thread at the same time. There we go. Whoops. And I'm just going back and forth because my stitches will be hidden a little bit better. If I went from here to here, then there would be a string right there. But if I go this way, then there's a little bit more to hide it. I don't know. I might overthink that part a little bit, but now next week, we're gonna do French knots with our metallic thread. So I highly recommend working on perfecting French knots, or at least getting like really good at them before we do that, because they're gonna be a little bit more difficult. right. Last one. Oh, that might be too tight. Oh, there we go. Okay. There we go. Okay, that is week 1. So next, you have the weekend to kind of play catch up. Let me know if you have questions as you're working over the weekend. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Lettering will be a big day. We'll probably do that next Friday. But we kind of have a lot to go over next week. So anyways, let me know if you have questions over the weekend, and I will see you on Monday. Bye.